everyone. Welcome back to day 3 of our workshop on research methodology and academic writing. We will begin the session 1 and I would like to call Professor Tharakeshwar VB on the dais. Now I request Dr. Sunil Shah to chair this session and facilitate Professor Tharakeshwar with University case. Tharakeshwar. Tharakeshwar. Tharakeshwar VB is a professor at Department of Translation Studies at the English and Foreign Languages University, Hyderabad, India. He has published in the areas of translation studies, colonialism and nationalism, linguistic nationalism, identity, literary historiography, etc. He is a bilingual writer who has published both in Kannada and English. He has coordinated a translation series called Classical Kannada Text in English. He has handled many research projects in the area of translation studies. He is on the editorial board of several journals. He has also coordinated a national level project on rethinking the crisis in English studies. He has nearly 28 years of teaching service in translation studies. He has presented papers in more than 250 seminars. He has organized more than 10 seminars. He has also directed many plays. Now I request Dr. Sunil Shah to take over this session.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's an honest pleasure to have Dr. Tharakeshwar VD sir amongst us today. Sir is going to talk about research on literature and research based on literature methodological issues. We are all looking forward to listen to your session, and it is going to be very interesting because this is something which our students need. I'll just briefly tell you about this. The students are MA, they are in first semester, third semester. Along with that, we have PhD, research scholars. So, welcome to the department, sir, and over to you.
Good morning, and thank you for having me here. So it's a pleasure to be here. I think 19 years back or 18 years back I had come here for a seminar which was hosted by your university along with CAL Mysore, a translation studies seminar. It's good to be back here, and thank you for having me here, sir. Today I will be speaking about research on literature and research based on literature. So I'm trying to make this distinction. Generally, we don't make this distinction because we assume that, and in common parlance, we start speaking about English studies, what is generally called as English studies, as a discipline. And being heads of the department, being professors, we always claim that English is a discipline. Like any other discipline like physics, chemistry, sociology, economics, and linguistics. But I am of the view that what we do in English departments doesn't fall under one discipline. It is not a discipline. So some of you might get a shock because we have worked in this department for 20-25 years and we have jealously guarded the boundary of the department being encroached by others. Because according to me, a discipline should have an object of inquiry. What we need to do, because research is about production of knowledge. So what knowledge you are producing? If you ask a physics person, they will tell you what they are doing, looking at. They will look at the physical properties of anything under the sun or in the sun or above the sun. If you give them sun, they will look at the physical properties of the sun. If you give them this diyas, they look at the physical properties of these diyas. Similarly, chemistry people will look at chemical properties of it. If you give it in economics person, they will look at the economic aspects of it. Sociology person, social aspects of it. Then what are we looking at when we say English? English is just a name of a language, and we have constructed a department on the basis of a language. And it will be interesting to know that English itself is a very late entrant into the university system. If you trace back the existing universities, they go back to 11th century, probably 10th, 11th century in Europe, and this was not one of the uh, disciplines which entered. And even in Oxford and Cambridge, in 19th century, there were no English departments. Latin was there, Greek was there, even Sanskrit center was there, or classical languages, what we today call as classical language. They were studied in Oxford and Cambridge, but not English. Only in the first decade of the 20th century, English became a teachable subject in Oxford and Cambridge. And why did it become a teachable subject in Oxford and Cambridge? Much before that, it entered the portals of the university in India, because they were ruling India. The British were ruling India. That's why even today our syllabus is dominated by British literature. Though if you look at the percentage of people who speak English, the Britain's contribution to the overall percentage of speakers of English is very less. America, Australia, Canada, India, Africa, they all overtake England. But that literature dominates even today. So why did it become a department? Because they were the rulers. Why did it become a department in Oxford and Cambridge? Because of linguistic nationalism. If it can be in the Indian universities, why can't it be in Oxford and Cambridge? You need to have it. Not only English, you take Gujarati, you take Tamil, you take Odia, Bengali. The impetus behind starting these departments in the universities is what I call as linguistic nationalism, love for your language. Just to give an example, universities in India in 19th century were not teaching universities. They were certifying universities. When the British began three main universities in Calcutta, Bombay, Chennai, what we today call as Chennai, then Madras, they were certifying universities. If you have to do BA, you have to take an exam. Then a board will constitute a syllabus for you. You read whenever you are ready to take the exam, you go and give the exam. That's why taking the exam, giving the exam, these phrases are very popular even today in English. So if you pass the exam, they will certify. There was no teaching. And Kannada was in that sense was a was introduced in Bombay and in Chennai, Madras University, in late 19th century. But they were not teaching. When did teaching began in a university? It began outside the domain of British universities. Mysore University. Mysore University was one of the first universities outside the British domain, started by a princely king, soon followed by Osmania University in Hyderabad, MS University Baroda, and many others. These were the first universities in the second decade of the 20th century. They began functioning outside the British domain. And here, though the Mysore University began in 1914, there was no Kannada department to teach. English was there. For next 14 years, in 1928, a delegation goes to the then registrar of Mysore University and demands that Mysore University should have a Kannada department. If Mysore University is not going to have a Kannada department, which other university will have? That was the logic. But if you look at the disciplines, disciplines were developed over a period of time. Just to give another example, physics was a discipline which existed earlier. From physics, electricals came out. From electricals, electronics came out. From electronics, computer science came out. As there is a progression in knowledge in that particular field, new areas of research were constituted. So there is an academic logic to it. But for these departments, there was no academic logic. It was linguistic nationalism, and this linguistic nationalism imagined that imagined a polity which is based on the principle of language. In order to conceive a linguistic polity, you need to do a lot of research on it to claim an antiquity for that language, for that people, for that society. To talk about Kannada language, Kannada literature, Kannada society, to claim antiquity, Kannada department was constituted. And what was the object of inquiry? Of course, they were doing linguistics, because in order to write the history of the language and then the structure of the to understand the structure of the language, they have to do linguistics. So in that sense, linguistics is a discipline. You give them any language in the world, they will study the structure of it. They will study the usage of it. It is not bound by any one particular language. Like sociology. You give them any society, they will study that society. But only for us, language is the boundary. So this language-based department will do little bit of linguistics, and they do little bit of aesthetics. What is aesthetics? What we study as poetics. Why we like something? Why we don't like something? Why we stop liking certain things now? So earlier we liked in India epics, to listen to it. Today nobody will listen to epics. Even the epics have to be narrated on screen. Ramayana, Mahabharata, then we will watch it. So we don't listen to the epic now. Why we started disliking epic in that sense, quote unquote. So why do we need novels now? Or why we have stopped reading novels also? Why do you watch reels now, which is of short duration? So there is some change in our aesthetics, what we like, and how this change came about. When did novel originated? What was the social condition in which novel originated in Europe? What were the social conditions in which novel originated in India, either in English or in Indian languages? These are aesthetic questions. So in literature departments, we do linguistics, we do little bit of aesthetics, and many a times we do lot of sociology and political science too. Before explaining a novel, we give the political background, social background, and we call it as historical background before introducing a text or an author. So what are we trying to do is that we are trying to understand a linguistic fact by placing it in the historical context, by looking at the socio-political factors which gave rise to that linguistic text. So then we are doing actually sociology or political science, or we are using sociological narratives, political science narratives to interpret a linguistic text, a text which exists in the form of language. So it's only interpretation that we are doing. What interpretation we are doing and how we are doing this interpretation, we draw from other disciplines. Sometimes not even sociology and political science, we draw from psychology. Psychological approach to literature, sociological approach to literature, now new nomenclatures, ecological approach to literature from the perspective of Anthropocene. So here our object, if at all if I can call it as, is to explain a particular text using the knowledge that already exists in other disciplines. Then what knowledge we are producing? We are simply trying to find what already people have said about ecology, some of those aspects in the narratives that we are looking at. Are we producing any new knowledge? Or are we incapable of producing any new knowledge? We are always parasites, depending on other disciplines. Looking at most of the PhD theses that come for evaluation, to me it sounds like so. There is nothing new that you are saying. This knowledge about ecology is already exists. You are simply applying it to a text. So are we only applicationists, not theorists? Theorists in the sense of producing knowledge. Why do we need to borrow Freud's theory, Lacan's theory? So what are we doing? We do little bit of linguistics, little bit of aesthetics, little bit of other disciplines in the name of literature, and we do little bit of history also. History of literature, history of language, history of a particular genre, biography of a particular author. That is writing the history of a particular author or a genre or a particular literature itself. So if you are writing the history, you need to borrow methodology from history. Because we are not going to produce new methodologies within what we call as English studies or Kannada studies or Tamil studies, Gujarati studies to write history. Are there methodologies which are unique to our department? No. We also do ELT in English department. What is ELT? English language teaching, English for specific purpose, English as second language, English as foreign language, how to teach English at primary school, how to teach English at undergraduate level, how to teach English in a nursing college. Have you done enough studies in the field of education? How to teach a language? I don't think my MA gives me any training to me to understand the concepts that exist in education. But we don't bother about it. As soon as MA, where most of the things that I have read is British literature, I take up research on ELT without understanding what is education, how this concept of education came in, and even without bothering what is language. If I ask you what is language, all of you will tell me it's a means of communication. Is it just a means of communication? There are many theories of language. Language as a means of communication is dominated our discourse only in the 20th century. Again in literature, the credit goes to I.A. Richards, who brought this notion of communication to language and literature. Before him, nobody bothered about it in English literature. But today, that is the definition which we instantly give when I ask you what is language. There are different theories of language. Are we trained in that? No. Without having any training in various philosophies of language, we venture into how to teach English to engineering college students. And our university, English and Foreign Languages University, we have a school of English language teaching. A school under which there are many departments. We churn out maybe 50 to 100 PhDs every year without having proper training. And what do we do in ELT? You prepare a questionnaire, give it to students, give it to teachers, get the answers, analyze it, produce tables and submit it. Are we trained in statistics? What is mean? What is mode? Without having training in statistics, you venture into research in quantitative studies. That too in language teaching. Without knowing which theory of language you are employing there. We simply assume that language is meant for communication. No. The entire past is constructed in language. What happened 10,000 years ago? I can access it only through language. How will Surat in 3026, that is 1001 years later, I can write a novel today. I can communicate which doesn't exist. To simply put, language is meant to lie. The beauty of language is you can lie. When I lie, what am I communicating? Language is much more slippery than what we think. And our department is constituted in the name of a language. So what kind of research we should do? I'm excluding ELT and other quantitative kind of research that we do in under the banner of English department, because I think the first session itself was about statistical methods here. So I think now you are trained about those methods also, because the person was from Statistics Institute in Calcutta. So I hope that you have known it. I will exclude that. So looking at the other kind of research, I am trying to demarcate two kinds of research that happens. Research on literature, research based on literature. When I say research on literature, what do I mean by it? I have already defined what is research for me. Producing knowledge about literature, on literature, is research on literature. Then what is literature? How to produce knowledge about literature? What is literature? It's a means of expression. That's what people would say. That comes from Wordsworth, romanticist. Before that, we never had that definition of literature. Literature is where we express ourselves. That hardly has 200 years of history, this definition of literature. When Valmiki wrote Ramayana, did he express himself? Trying to write a narrative about a woman who was in his ashram and teaching it to our kids so that they would go and narrate the story everywhere, including to the protagonist of the story. Was it a piece of expression by Valmiki? Whatever he felt, his emotions, his experience. We think that literature always expresses author's emotions and experience. Valmiki was not present when Rama went in search of Sita through the Dandakaranya. Then how does he know how Rama feels? It is not his experience. Then why are we calling literature as expressing ourselves? That authors, they have an experience and they express it through their writing. This definition comes from Wordsworth and Coleridge, lyrical barriers. What is the definition? Spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings uh, recollected in tranquility. That is one definition of literature. Earlier, poets constructed narratives for different purposes. If somebody asked me to write an epic, I will write an epic. How do I write? The Kavyas will tell me that there should be 18 kinds of Varnanas, Ashtadasha Varnana. Whether I like it or not, there should be a description of a house. There should be a description of a seashore. Because these are mandatory. Then only it will be called as an epic. So I will bring them even if I have never visited a seashore. How do I know? Because through other writings. It is not necessary that I should express myself only my experiences. I read other literature and that becomes part of my experience. The notion of experience with which we operate when we talk about women's writing, Dalit writing is very narrow. We are trying to look the life of the writer in their writings. Dalit writing. Oh, they have undergone this. That's why it is like this. Women's writing. As if women don't construct any male characters in their writing. As if Dalit writers don't construct non-Dalit characters in their writing. This primacy to experience that we are giving in our research, we don't question it at all. Are there different theories of literature? So we need to ask this fundamental question. If language is meant to lie, literature is fiction. Fiction is a means it lies. Even when you are watching a movie which is based on true facts, true incidents, there will be a statutory warning in the beginning. Resemblance to anything that is inadvertent, we did not mean to say so. Because language is not a transparent medium which allows anything to pass through it. Something is happening, I will capture it in language, and language is like a see-through glass. The things that have happened comes through that glass and you can watch it. No. The glass modifies it. The language modifies it. That's why many of the women writers would say, this language is not enough to say what I want to say. So how do we analyze this text, which is a linguistic fact? Because it has been said in language. So I am calling it as a linguistic fact, where language is woven together. In fact, the meaning of the word text is that only. It comes from textile, texture. You feel the fabric, how it is woven. So the text is also words are woven, language is woven together. And how it has been woven together, the texture will make the difference, how you feel about it. Just to give an example, if I ask my daughter, communicate that I am thirsty, please bring a glass of water. A glass of water, please bring it. You won't listen. I communicated, no. Chino, please. Immediately it will come. So the texture of these words is important. It is not simply communication. Language is about how to get things done. Language does things, and the entire text is woven like that. When it is rich in its tapestry, in texture, when I am narrating, I use a particular kind of texture. When a particular character speaks, it uses a particular kind of texture. When another character speaks, that has a different texture altogether. By looking at the words, we know to which social strata or educational strata or economic strata the character belongs to. You don't have to say all those things. By putting a certain kinds of words, you indicate that this character belongs to this social strata or this economic strata. So how do we understand these things? It is not about communication. It's about constructing the word through language. As I said earlier, language constructs the word for us. Even when I am seeing you, how do I am seeing you? Some moving flesh and blood in front of me, erudite scholars in front of me, keen students of literature in front of me, students who are forced to attend by the teachers. I am simply describing what I am seeing. Again, I have to use categories which exist in language to make sense of what I am seeing. Each of the statements that I made about you will construct this reality for me. So what concepts we employ defines what is word for us. That's why one of the theories will say language is the limit of my word. Learning another language is learning to inhabit another word. There is another theory of language where your theory that language is a means of communication will not come to work. Or language is about doing things will not come to work. Because sometimes we simply say words, I don't have to do anything. Sometimes it will have therapeutic value. I just want to let it out. Then, okay, I'm fine. Otherwise, I become a split personality. I need to let it out. So it has a therapeutic value. There are different theories of language. I can make you kill somebody who has not done anything to you, who has not, you have not seen him or her in your lifetime. Because that person forefathers 10,000 years ago killed your ancestors 10,000 years ago. Your blood will boil. You will go and kill. That is the effect of language. Even if I don't believe in God, God as a concept exists in my language. I have to say, I don't believe in God. That means God as a concept exists, but I don't believe. That is the power of language. If it exists as a concept, then it exists. You can accept it or you can reject it. If you look at literature, language like this, then how do we do research? Again, going back to the issue of research on literature, research based on literature. When did the idea of I became important? When did first person narrative, where the first person and the narrator and the author, these three roles overlap each other, came into your literature? And why? That is an important question to ask and find answers. That is literature, how the novel came into existence. Social novel. Again, you might say that there are other kinds of novels. Banabhatta had Kadambari in Sanskrit. Yes, they had. But when did Veer Dalpat, sorry, Veer Narmad, they all started writing. And how did they write? Why did they write? How is it different from the earlier kind of writing? How did this new idea of new genres emerge in Gujarati? That's an important issue to look at. What were the trajectories that made this event possible in Gujarati? It is not that they were born with a gift of language, Saraswati Putrate. So as soon as they were born, they were destined to write these things. That is one theory of literature, where you think that writers are born with certain gift. Purva Janma ka punya. Another thing is to look at the socio-economic political conditions that make it possible for this writer to emerge in that particular language. How this transformation in the institution of literature, I am using the term literature as an institution, not literature. We generally think that literature is a text piled up chronologically from beginning to now. No. Chronological ordering of these texts is not literature. If you perceive literature as an institution, this institution performs a particular function in that society. And within these institutions, there are many agents. If you look at it as a structure, there is a writer, there is a publisher, there is a proofreader, there is a seller, there are libraries. You go and get the book, you read it, and there are some people who give feedback on what they have read. Now you call them critics. No, these are all these things constitute an institution. If literature existed in India earlier, who were the agents then? Now I write, I publish, I have copyright. When did copyright come into being? Earlier I wrote because I wanted to impress my king. So I write an entire kissa about my Rajput king. And he will be very happy after listening to it because I glorify him in there. He will remove his necklace and he will throw it at me. I will catch it. That was the function of literature earlier. That's why we look at some of the kings as patrons of literature. Not all kings patronize literature. Only a few kings patronize literature. So who are the patrons of literature? Do we have patrons even today? Or is it the readers who are the patrons now? If they buy the book, my success is guaranteed. If they don't buy the book, nobody will publish my second novel. Or I should publish myself by paying money, and wherever I go, this is my novel. This is my novel. You give it to others. And if they are also writers, they will also exchange it. Take mine. Or Booker Prize, Saraswati Samman, Jnan Peeth, Sahitya Academy. These are the new patrons today. So if you are doing research on literature, you look at literature as an institution and see what changes are happening and why these changes are happening. Because to understand ourselves, we need to understand what changes are happening in our institutions. When I say institution, it's not institutions like universities, institutions like literature. Why nobody is buying books today? Now all of you are seriously interested in literature, either doing a master's program in literature or doing research in literature. How many of you bought a poetry collection in the last 2 years, which is not prescribed? But if you will be astonished to know that poetry is the most written genre even today, though it is the most least sold out genre. Why? This is an important question to ask. It will reveal about us, our aesthetic choices, how our aesthetics is changing, why our even MA English students don't buy any book to read. People like Veer Narmad, Naval Ram, Dalpat, nobody forced them to buy. They bought, they would read. Though they may not be doing any MA program in language. Now literature could be accessed only through formal education. Earlier we thought literature is non-formal way of educating people. Why on religious occasions a particular text was narrated out? Because we wanted to educate people in that certain values which is enshrined in that literature. Now literature in the printed literature is not performing that function. Are TV serials performing that function today? Not even cinema. That too Korean TV serials. Many of my students are glued to Korean series. So is that providing an occasion for me to understand life and its values? And what these series are projecting as values of life? Do we need to know about it or not? Then we should do research on that. Why most of our younger generation is watching Korean teledrama? And if you are doing statistics, quantitative research seriously, now you have new tools of doing research. How many people liked something? How many views? Where do they stop the film? When do they take a break? Now earlier the structure of the films was like that. You go, sit in the theater, you watch the movie. And you go out when there is a intermission or interval. Now with OTT platforms on your mobile, anytime you can watch, anywhere you can watch, anytime you can stop, and you can skip and jump to another. What does these statistics tell us about? Or you leave it to AI, what they call as algorithms, to understand you and manipulate you. Or we should produce knowledge about that. to understand the change in our aesthetics, our preferences, what we like, what we don't like, how much of our society is watching it, to what extent they are watching it, when they are stopping it, at what time they discontinue to watch a movie. These things will reveal us about our taste, our aesthetic taste, our preferences. If you are doing research on literature, on aesthetics, on poetics, this is what you need to look at. For example, Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, we translated from Sanskrit from 9th century, 10th century onwards. But we never translated Abhijnana Shakuntala. We looked at Kumara Sambhava and other texts of Kalidasa, but not Abhijnana Shakuntala. If you look at when these languages, which have older connection to Sanskrit literature, started translating Abhijnana Shakuntala, you will find that it is only after 1860s. All Indian languages. Why? 1780s onwards, in Bengal, they translate Abhijnana Shakuntala into European language, English, European languages, and it continues. By 1860s, 60, 70 years, most of the European languages, including Latin, there are translations of Abhijnana Shakuntala. Not only just translations, there are ballet performances too in Europe. When the master said that he is the Shakespeare of India, is it? Translate it. Until then we never thought Abhijnana Shakuntalam is worth translating into Indian languages. Just looking at what is being translated when into our language will reveal to us how our taste, aesthetic taste is changing and why it is changing. Earlier also we were translating from Sanskrit. We were translating Paka Shastra, Sopa Shastra, Koka Shastra, Kama Shastra, Ashwa Shastra, Gaja Shastra. We never bothered to translate Abhijnana Shakuntala because we had our own narratives, stories. Shastra was important to translate from Sanskrit. Super Shastra, cookery thing. We have translated that. In Kannada you find a lot of cookery books being translated. In fact, if you search Super Shastra, the book comes in search is not Sanskrit work, Kannada work. But the word is Sanskrit. Soup comes from that. Super Shastra. But we were translating all these knowledge things. We never thought we should translate Abhijnana Shakuntala. Kumara Sambhava was important for our sectarian reasons because it talks about Shiva and the birth of is Kumara. Those things were important. This Shakuntala's story with Dushyanta, their love affair, their marriage without elders' consent, and then a boy being born, he being named as Bharata, and some people claiming that because of him we have got the name Bharata. We were never interested in that. We became interested in this text only after 1860s. You look at Bengali, you look at Telugu, Tamil, Kannada. Only after this period you find translations of Abhijnana Shakuntala. And as a competition we don't have one. One of my students did a work in Malayalam. She found more than 50 translations of Shakuntalam in the last 120 years. Other texts of other texts of Kalidasa are not much translated. So there is a change in our aesthetics. New genres are coming up into our language. Why they are coming up? And why these translations of Abhijnana Shakuntalam will reveal us. Who translated it first? How did they translate? Then the next translation, how did it respond to the earlier translation? It tells us about the story of standardization of our own language in the late 19th century. With entry of print technology, our languages becoming print languages, now literature being printed, not composed, written and printed, our script being standardized, otherwise handwriting, it keeps on changing. 12th century Gujarati is different from 18th century Gujarati and 19th century Gujarati. It kept on changing. But once the print came, the letters were fixed and everybody started learning them in schools by looking at the printed model. Then more or less it remained the same. There is not much difference in the script. So these translations will also reveal how our language became standardized. Tracking the differences within the translation will narrate the story of how Malayalam being standardized over a period of time. What words were used in 1880s, what words were used in 1900 for the same thing. So if you look at literature as an institution, then you will ask questions like what new genres are coming up, why they are coming up, why we stopped looking at the old genres, why they went out of circulation. Why even though we buy today certain text, we don't read them. We keep it in the showcase and worship them. There are many texts like that. It is kept only in the puja room. Some are kept only in the showcase, not to be read, but respected. It is the pride of our language, our culture. No, what is our attitude to the products of this institution is an important question to ask and find answers. Then you will be producing knowledge about literature as an institution. On literature, what is this institution? What function it is performing? Which are the different agents in this institution? How the transformation is occurring in this institution? What are the pulls and pressures which are pushing the direction of these entities within that institution? As students in language name department, if you think you are working on literature, you need to ask these questions. Research on literature. Then you will be producing knowledge about literature. And again, we are using literature in a very narrow sense. Super Shastra is also literature. Koka Shastra is also literature. Shakuna Shastra is also literature. If you look at our Indian poetics, Shabdartha Sahitam Kavyam. Any Shabda has Artha, it is Kavya. Even when, if I am doing research in nanotechnology, my supervisor will ask me to do literature survey. What does literature there mean? Anything written or said about that particular topic in nanotechnology. So literature is also used in this broad sense. But somehow, in the last 200 years, we have narrowed it to certain genres of writing. Anything in language is literature. Anything in language. Not necessarily printed. Even oral. Oral literature. Today we use the term folk in India. And when we are doing research on even folk, we will not look at the oral. We look at the printed folk. If it is not printed, we'll go, we'll ask them to sing that song, we record it, then transfer it to transcribe it on paper and then get it printed, then do research on it. There's not, it's a stupid thing to do. If you are studying Ramayana, you can't study from page 1 to page end. I don't think anybody in the history of this country has ever read Ramayana from page 1 to page end. It was not possible. Not everybody could read. Only those who could recite it, they would recite it. They will not read, they will recite. To recite, they might use a manuscript. The manuscript, the written form, is only an aid to reciting. They might look at it once in a while to help themselves in reciting. They will not read it. Even when writing came into our literary institution, it was only an aid to orality. It was not independent of orality. Only with print we started reading. So if you should not analyze it, on one particular occasion somebody will narrate a particular episode. And some other occasion somebody will narrate a particular episode. So you listen to these episodes and it is not in a chronological order in which it appears in the text now, in the printed text now. You construct your own text through these various episodes which are not necessarily chronological. And how do you access this text if you are studying it chronologically? This is the problem of superimposing the methodology of printed text on oral compositions. If you are studying oral literature, it requires a different methodology. Even today there are people who can recite the entire epic. I come from Hyderabad and Telugu speaking areas share a larger border with Karnataka, Kannada speaking areas. In these border areas, there are illiterate women who never went to school, who don't know how to read and write. They are the repositories of several epics. And they can narrate the epic both in Kannada and Telugu. Earlier they used to sing an epic for 2-3 days only in the night. Somebody will invite the landlord of that area, because that is one way of he showing his power to the other people. He will organize a program, he will take care of these singers, they will sing, others will attend to that. That was a part of entertainment for them. So in that sense he was the patron of this art form. Now you can't invite them for 2-3 days. Land Ceiling Act has come. You yourself as a lost the land. You can call them only for 1 day, and now nobody will listen to the entire night, you will ask, finish it in 3 hours. And that illiterate lady can reduce the entire epic to 3 hours narration in song. She can expand the text to 3 nights. She can contract it to 3 hours. She can sing it in Telugu. She can sing it in Kannada. Each time she performs, a new text gets created. It is not the same text. Many of my former colleagues caught hold of some of these singers, recorded their narration, brought them into book, and they became professors. So these oral singers, illiterate women, were responsible for promotion of many of us as professors. But the irony is that now we look at these printed books. No, that is not the text. That is one of the texts. Each time it differs. Why it changes? Not only because the time constraint, also because if I see most of my audience are going to sleep, suddenly I bring in an episode and the music will go to high. They will all get up. Then again I go back to the main story. They know how to reorganize the entire plot according to the audience mood. When to bring in this episode, when to go back to the main narrative. The text is more dynamic. It is not something that exists already there. It gets created in their articulation. Why I am not showing any PPT? Also because of that. Because then I will stick to that narrative. When I am performing it orally, I know your mood, your face reactions. Depending on that, I go back and come. If I need some more explanation for this point, I will elaborate it. Otherwise, I will skip it and move it. This is the advantage of oral presentation. I learn from these writers. Writers is a wrong term again. I am using the concept of print based literary institution on an literary institution which is not print based, oral based. They are composers. And if you ask them who wrote it, they don't know. I learned it from my parents, they will say. Or from my sister. It continues. Now the younger generation is not ready to continue it because there is no patronage for it. That's why people like us who are in the university going and recording it and getting our promotions based on those publications. So these transformations in these institutions we need to look at. That will tell us about who we are, what kind of changes that are happening within us, and why these changes are happening. We don't have to say it's good or bad. I am not declaring anything. Earlier it was like this, now we don't have it like this. It is not our job. You produce knowledge about this institution, the transformations that it is undergoing. Give the knowledge to the people, let the people decide whether they want it to die, whether they want it to continue. As an activist, if you are also an activist along with being a researcher, then you can take your own position. But you don't have to necessarily bring in your activist position into your research. Many times we don't make a distinction between our passion and our research. It is good to be passionate about your research topic, but once you start your research, keep your opinion aside. But in many research I find that you are very passionate about climate change, so you are looking at climate science fiction, and your opinions you are finding it on those novels that you are analyzing. So your analysis is not coming through the plot analysis or character analysis, thematic analysis, or the language that is being employed there, or placing the text in a particular context. It's coming more from your external reading or from your passion. That's what I find in many of the research that is happening in literature departments. Then why should I read these 250 pages that you have sent to me as an examiner? I already know some of these issues. What new knowledge you are producing? If there is no new knowledge, only an application of the existing knowledge to these fiction. Generally, most of our research scholars work on fiction. People have started working on poetry. You just do a survey in your own department. How many of your seniors have done research on poetry? How many of them have done on fiction? How many of them have done on dramatic narratives or plays? You will find the answer. So now I'm moving from research on literature to research based on literature. This bringing the existing knowledge in from different disciplines to explain your text is not literature. It's only explication, interpretation, hermeneutical exercise. But how do you analyze to produce knowledge out of it? And to which discipline you are contributing to it is important. When you ask the question about the literary institution, mostly you are contributing to questions of aesthetics, but we need to keep in mind that these disciplinary boundaries are imaginary. They are not real. We have created these boundaries between sociology, political science, history for our convenience. Okay, I will sleep on this side of the bed, you sleep on that side of the bed. Convenience. It doesn't mean that I should not sleep on that side and that person should not sleep on this side. Because what we have created for our convenience is becoming a hurdle for us today. During Greek time, political science was done by one person, aesthetics was also done by one person, physics was also done by one person. Aristotle is read in physics, Aristotle is read in literature, Aristotle is read in other departments too. So one philosopher would produce knowledge. And most of these classifications, these physics, these history, all these things were created during that time. Of course, there are new areas of research. Anthropology did not exist then. Management studies did not exist then. But the fundamental basic subjects were created during that time. One person used to do it. But now, this is mine. I will not look at it. We have developed that kind of attitude. Look at the title that you get once you produce your research. Doctor. Doctor of philosophy. Philosopher is one who produces knowledge. Whether you produce knowledge in English department, whether you produce knowledge in nanotechnology, you are called Doctor of Philosophy. And many people have done doctorate in nanotechnology doesn't know why it is called philosophy. We also don't know why we are called Doctor of Philosophy. Many times when I ask the question, people say, we do in-depth study, that's why we are called doctors. And I ask, what is the depth? 8 meters? 4 meters? 3 meters? What is in-depth? There was no boundaries then. We created these boundaries with the explosion of knowledge for our convenience. Because in my lifetime I cannot master the knowledge in this field. So let me focus on this. It doesn't mean that when I am producing new knowledge, I should not look at the same or related questions being addressed in other areas of research. A good research will always cross boundaries. And a very good research will constitute a new area of research. Boundaries are important, but not so important. And today crossing the boundary has become important. We call it as interdisciplinary studies, multidisciplinary studies, transdisciplinary studies, postdisciplinary studies. That is the buzzword today everywhere. But these buzzwords should not become a kind of excuse for not knowing anything even in one discipline. Many a times it comes as a kind of apology for not knowing anything in my own area of research. It should be a necessity to cross boundary. It should not be an apology for not knowing enough in my own field of research. In that sense, literature or language-based departments were always interdisciplinary in nature. We did linguistics, we did little bit of history, history of language, history of literature, history of a writer, history of a genre. We always dabbled with politics and social science in the name of historical background. When Brecht was writing these novels, what was happening in Germany? When Maxim Gorky wrote this novel, what was happening in Russia? When Tolstoy wrote this, what was happening in the period of Tsar? We give the background. But that is a different kind of thing, research, where the knowledge of the other areas of research become a kind of master narrative which you employ to explicate your text. I am not talking about that kind of research when I talk about research based on literature. Not use history to explain the film on 1857, Mangal Pandey, who already Nehru has written about it, Britishers have written about it, many other scholars have written about what we today call as Sipahi Mutiny, First War of Independence, and use that to explain this cinematic text called Mangal Pandey. Use Mangal Pandey to understand the present day history, why this narrative is casted in this manner today, where history is not a master narrative which explains this text. Through this text you construct the history of that. Instead of placing the text in the context, through the text you construct the context. That's what historians do. They have old text, some document of that period, even a coin. one or two words in that coin. Using that thing, they try to construct the context of that period. Through the text, try to go to the context. Not use context as the master narrative to explicate the text. So use the text to construct the context. Don't use history as a master narrative to explain your literary text. Use your linguistic fact text which exists in language to construct the history of that time. Just to give an example, okay, if there is an epic in which there is an episode where they talk about the palace of the king and they say the king was so rich, his entire palace was built in gold. Not only the palace, even the door was in gold, even the latch was in gold, even the lock was in gold, even the key for that lock was in gold. Do you use that epic to write that? That king had a golden palace? It is there in the text. Are you going to take that this text is communicating about that period to us? No. Why do we have door? Why do you have lock, key? To protect the valuable. To protect the valuable, if you are using valuable, that was not valuable then. So gold was not valued then. It means that. But in the narrative, if the gold was used as an hyperbole, that he had a palace of this kind, just to say that he was very rich. If it is a metaphor, then gold was considered as a signifier of richness even then. But if you take it literally, then gold was not valued then. It was used to protect something that was valuable. Maybe his own life, his several wives and children who live in the palace, their lives were important. It becomes like that. If you think gold is important, then if you read it metaphorically, it becomes a signifier of richness. So when to read metaphorically, when to read literally. Most of the problems on which we are fighting today is because of reading these old texts, sometimes literally, sometimes metaphorically, according to our present convenience. So how do we do it? If you are trying to produce the knowledge of the past through the text which belong to that period, then you are actually doing history. That's what I call as research based on literature. Using literature, anything that is in language, sometimes that is not enough. The text is not enough to talk about it. You need to look at the dilapidated fort of that period, non-discursive evidences of that period. So there is a text. Text is not enough to construct the past. There are other artifacts which belong to that period, which have been dated as belonging to that period. Using them as pieces, you need to construct a plausible narrative. The construction of the past is always a plausible narrative. We can't say this is how it happened. This is how it looks it might have happened. Based on these these evidences, and I am linking these evidences in this way. Because you are the one, you are filling the gap. When we were digging a well in FLU, English and Foreign Language University, after digging for 15 feet, we got a Roman coin. What to do? FLU had connections with Roman Empire, a trade. Or Kakatiyas had connections with them. Or before Kakatiyas, Shaka kings had relationship with them. Or during Nizam period, somebody had come, was interested in collecting old coin. He had collected some old coin. He was robbed and killed near what we today call as Osmani University, FLU. And while running away, when he was killed, this fell down here. How do you construct the narrative? Through that piece of evidence. So you have to link these evidences when you are constructing the past. So literary text is one piece of evidence which might belong to that period. You have to be careful in how you read and understand what is there. But don't think it is simply communicating that that king had a golden palace. But you need to look at other evidences and link them and construct a plausible evidence in language. Many of what you think as history, historiography, is constructed like this. Language which gives access to our past. Without language, there is no past in that sense. We are also animals, there are other animals on this planet like us. Nobody has told the goat that my forefathers killed his forefathers. Just imagine if it had been told to that goat, what will the goat will do to me? But we are doing it because we have this weapon called language. Where we can, they have access. It might be angry because I did something to that goat. So it will show that anger on me and at that particular point of time. That is his memory. But we have augmented our memory with this called language. And these narratives that we have constructed about our family, about our community, about our nation, about our institution, all these things are constructed in language, and these constructions happen in the present. Many a time our present likes and dislike influence the way we construct the past. Similarly, our present dictates the way we construct the future too. And many a times it is not simply the present, because present is very fleeting. Once I name the present, it becomes past. It's very fleeting. In fact, it is not the present which dictates the past. My vision for the future that dictates my past. If I want to be friend with you, I construct a particular kind of past to you, as I did in the beginning here. I'd come here earlier. It's nice to be here again. I wouldn't say that when I came last year, what happened. Last time, what happened here, how the guest house was. Now, how I construct the same event now depends on what kind of relationship I would like to have with this department in future, not even the present. So when you are using literature to construct the past, be aware of the fact that your vision of the future influences the way you construct the past. Once you are aware of this element, that your own vision of the future might color the way you are constructing the past, then the way you construct the past will differ. If you are a true researcher, I'm not saying you eliminate it completely. Sometimes even I don't know what I am doing. Many a times when I am evaluating PhD dissertations which come from different universities, I simply say that again and again. Forgive them, Lord, they don't know what they are doing. The very fact that they have come to do literature, not gone to more greener pastures today, shows that they don't know what they are doing. That is on a later note that keep it. So if you are using text, literary text, to construct the past, that is using literature to produce knowledge on other things. So based on literature, you are constructing the historiography, maybe of an institution. If you look at the world record of this university, through those world records, you construct the history of this institution. If you come across the personal archive of a writer in this old city, through that you will be reconstructing the history of that particular person and their social relations through those letters. That is literature, whether these epistles, that is letters, or the documents. If you look at the annual reports, they might say a different story about Veer Narmad University. Because annual report, because you are submitting to the your funding agency, that is the government, it paints the institution in a particular way. If you look at the internal exchanges between the faculty members and the administration, that will tell you the different story of this institution. So depending on your archives, the way you construct the past is determined. So what material you are looking at? It is literature, letters, or if you talk about memories based on it, you interview the old people who are still living, who have studied in this, and collect their memories and work on it. They tell a different story about this institution. Yes, 10 minutes. Okay, I will stop here. In this session, I will ask some questions from your side because it has been.
You have 10 minutes to conclude, then we'll have 10 minutes for discussion.
Okay.
Whatever suits
Now
you.
we start the discussion. Oh, this is 1 o'clock. I thought there will be gap break and then I will continue.
Please come.
Okay.
Thank you very much, sir. Right from history of language and literature, pre-colonial, post-colonial, we came to the rise of linguistic text, and sir talked about interdisciplinary approaches with a special mention of ELT and his love for ELT research in ELT. We'll discuss that. Uh, but the major focus was what is the new knowledge which we are contributing to the field. So he was not sarcastic in a way. I feel it is more of a concern for genuine research. Uh, so research on literature and research based on literature, very uh, interesting. It was very interesting to know the way in which he took the entire session and took us on the journey. I'm sure whatever he said, it is going to be with you. Don't be scared because this comes after 20, 30 years of experience. His concern is genuine. The way in which he talked about a few theses which he might have, in fact, read and commented upon. What I feel is we learn from our experiences. So we cannot reach his level right now, today, right? So the more you attend, discuss, learn. Learning should be the idea we have to take. You may make mistakes right now. You may not adopt the right methodology, right approach towards the work which you are doing. But learning should be there. So you have to learn from your mistakes. So it was a very interesting session, in a way, eye opener for many of us. And I'm sure you're going to carry forward the words, his concern, and apply that to your own research work. That is more important. And that is what Sir is here for. So we'll now take a few questions. I'm sure you have many questions. I have also a few questions related to ELT because that is my field. Yeah. Yes, Sergio.
Somebody will pass me the mic.
I think you are loud enough. Yeah. Yeah, I think we'll take that question first. Let's respond. Yeah.
Thank you for bringing that. See, what is knowledge? That I did not get into that. I simply said research is about producing new knowledge. But what is knowledge? How do we know that it is knowledge? How do we know what we know? Is the fundamental question here. For that, you need to get into epistemology. Epistemology is a field of philosophy, which deals with what is knowledge. On what basis we call something as knowledge. It has nothing to do with Western. They also are afraid about on what basis you call something as knowledge. Even in Indian traditions, we use the word pramana shastra. On what pramana you call something as knowledge. In the court, if you take a oath that whatever I am saying is true, nothing but the truth, they believe you. It is called sworn statement. You have to make a sworn statement. If you say something outside of it, the court will not take that into cognizance. That is the epistemological framework with which the court operates. So similarly, what epistemological framework we need to adopt in research is the question here. On what basis I call this as knowledge? So there are different kinds of epistemology. Broadly, one is empiricism. The things that you can test through your senses. We have five senses through which we take what you call as data and then we analyze it and then we come to the conclusion. This girl is nodding her head, so it means that she has understood what I am saying. Is it? So she just wants to say that, yes, yes, I have understood. Then be like this. If you are be like this, you didn't understand, I will explain it again. So in order to make, avoid that I have to explain it again, you simply nodding already. Yes, I understand. So how do we understand? This is the sensory data. My eyes are receiving this data because some light is falling on that object and that object is reflecting that light. That reflection of light is entering my eyes. My eyes is processing it, and then I have pre-knowledge, and this pre-knowledge is interpreting this data and then coming to the conclusion. So these one is empiricism purely based on your senses, and what I said is phenomenology. So my pre-knowledge interacts with my sensory perception, then constructs the knowledge. And there is another rationalism, that it is data, and through reasoning capacity I connect these two data and then come to the conclusion. So rationalism, empiricism, phenomenology, these are the three dominant epistemologies that we accept in research. There are other epistemologies too. There are minor variations that we can get into the debate. Many of the good scholars will get into the debate on these issues. They will not say you are telling a lie. No, I am right. It is not like TV debate where you say you are telling a lie, I am telling the truth. No, you have collected this data, you have analyzed this data from this framework, and this is the conclusion that you have come to. My data is this, my method of analysis is different, so I have come to this conclusion. So for between two different scholars, the discussion will happen on what data you have collected, how you collected it, how you interpreted the data, and how you came to the conclusion. So this is the level of discussion that we need to have in research. It is not that that is right, this is wrong. I should be aware in research, aware of the fact that in research, if I had collected a different set of data and analyzed it differently, then my answer would have been different. So whatever I am coming to the conclusion is based on what I perceive as data and how I collected the data and how I analyze that data. So with methods that I employed to collect the data. When I gave the example of oral literature, do you look at folk in print form or you go and do the field work there? That is participant observation. How she changes the narrative when audience are running. When you look at all these things, then what you perceive as data will be different. If you look at the print text, that will be different. So how do you collect the data? What methods you are applying to collect the data? How you are analyzing it? And because we deal with text, the nature of the text is also important. You can't analyze an epic the way you analyze a lyrical poem. Lyrical poem is not about narration. It's about individual emotion, the romantic poetry. So the way you analyze a ballad, historical ballad, and the way you analyze a lyrical ballad, the method has to be two different things. So the nature of the material will tell you what methods you need to bring to analyze that material. So we need to keep all these things in mind, then come to the conclusion. There is nothing like truth. It's the knowledge based on this set of data which was collected in this way, which was analyzed through these methods, and this is the conclusion. And coming to the question of language, yes, knowledge exists in language. That's what differentiates this animal called human being from other animals. We have produced this knowledge, that's why we think that we are the master of this universe. All other beings are under our control. This is the arrogance of our language that we have towards other beings. And whatever the pitfalls of language, we should be aware of it. So knowledge exists in language. Even if you are doing research in painting, fine arts, finally you have to produce a dissertation written in language and submit it. You can have appendix, number of pictures, number of paintings, but finally you have to have written analysis. because the knowledge can be in only language form. Even in science, if you conducted the experiment for 5, 6, 7 years, at least you need to submit 15 to 20 page dissertation, how you conducted this experiment, what are the things that you used, and how it failed. That is also knowledge. You do these things, you will not produce this. That is also knowledge. Failure is not failure, that is also knowledge. But you have to write. Any other questions?
Acha. If anyone else says, we'll come back to you, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Sir, I have a doubt. You say not forgive them what they don't know what they are doing. So you please make that clear.
But it was only a kind of lighter way.
Sir, let me complete three questions. Second, initially you said about women's writing in English and Dalit literature. So that is my area of interest and I have done PhD on that. Now, Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar, I would like to quote here. And he said, English is the milk of a lioness. Only those who drink it will rot. ROAI. Okay. Second, I measure the progress of a community by the degree of progress which women have achieved. So why only we should give Lalit literature the importance and not the Dalit literature? And second is English is also given the same equal importance in the constitution where it guarantees equality. Out of 22 languages, English is also the same. So how long shall we avoid and ignore English? It is an international language, it is electronic language, it is official language everywhere. So I hear often, not only you, many resource persons, they talk against English. So
I got the point. I am not against English. I earn my livelihood by being trained in English. My MA, MPhil, PhDs, if you look at my certificate, is in English. And I work in English and Foreign Languages University. So I cannot undercut my own existence. So I am not against English. In fact, in 97 itself, I wrote an article which sounds similar to what Baba Sahib Ambedkar has said, that Dalits should demand English. So in 97. So I am not against English. And if Dalits are demanding
because
English,
Sanskrit was not allowed for the untouchables. Sanskrit language was not allowed for the untouchables.
but Baba Sahib Ambedkar learned Sanskrit, analyzed Sanskrit text, and produced lot of knowledge about Indian past.
Sir, he suffered a lot. He has done cleaning for 2 months to his guru's house and then he was allowed. Otherwise, he was not allowed. And the people, untouchables who speak Sanskrit, Om Namah Shivaya, then their tongues were cut in the past.
No, I am not disputing all those things, whatever happened in the past. But we need to use these texts belonging to the past to reconstruct the past what happened. You will not know that even the tongue was cut if you don't have access to those texts. Because there is no other text that is available of that language. Even if you look at Tamil, even Kannada, which are the oldest languages in India apart from Sanskrit.
5% only. Tamil is Sanskritized only 5%. Other languages are more. But Tamil is not that much we can say that they have accepted Sanskrit language. As it is a Dravidian language and it is considered as the oldest language of India.
No, Sanskrit, Pali, Prakrit, all these languages have to be studied. So Gujarati comes from Prakrit. Marathi comes from Prakrit. What we today call as Bengali, Odia, all come from Prakrit. So this Pali, Prakrit, no language is important for me as a researcher. If I want to look at the past, any material in any language of that period is essential. That's why Baba Ambedkar, in spite of the difficulties, has to look at Sanskrit text to construct the Indian past in a particular way, which other scholars had not done till then. So I am not against English. I am not against looking at the past. I am only saying how we should do it.
And Jesus quote also.
Jesus quote is only in a later way. I generally say, even research, many big people have not done research. Just to give an example, there was a vice chancellor of Mysore University. who had not done research. And people asking why you have not done research. Great writer Kurupu in Kannada. He said it's beyond my capacity. Then I quote that and say that when people like him said that research is beyond their control, people like me have Dr. Tharakeshwar in front of us. We are fools, where angels fear to tread, fools like us rush in. So in that sense I have tried to say, including me. Not that I was only targeting others. It was only a kind of metaphor. You should not read it literally.
So marginal discourse, these women and Dalits and tribals all have suffered a lot for ages. So that is the need also to be explored.
I'm not saying you should not explore. I'm only saying that the other problems of that is looking at Dalit writing as only of suffering. There is a Dalit writer called Sidlingaya in Kannada. He started writing in 1970s. He was a firebrand. His autobiography is translated into English. Um, and his poems are translated into English. But by 1980s, in 15 years, he was established. He didn't want to be called as a Dalit writer. He was saying, you did not call Kuvempu a Vokliga writer, you did not call Bendre a Brahmin writer. Why are you identifying me as a Dalit writer? You call them as Kannada writer, why don't you call me as a Kannada writer? It's an historical necessity. In the beginning, he was asserting that, yes, we have Dalit, recognize us. Then that itself
But
becomes
now
a word for ghettoization.
Sir, I have
You
heard
contest it.
through a writer only, he said that why should we consider ourselves as Dalit? The term Dalit is not given by us, it is given by the so-called high caste people. So we will not accept it.
That's why we need to historicize it. So when do we stress the fact that it is Dalit writing? When do you stress the fact that it is Indian writing?
You want to ask question? Yeah.
So I want to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah. So during the session.
Be loud. Yeah.
Yeah. During the session, there were few instances where you mentioned about creating new theories. I just want to know the perception about the application of the theories. Like if there are new theories, what about the application of those theories in the research?
No, research is not about applying theory. When you are applying theory, that is also research in a way, in the sense that somebody has posited a theory with a limited data. You are applying that theory to other data and trying to find out whether this theory is applicable in for this set of data or not. That is also research. But a good research will posit a new theory. Theory in the sense that knowledge production. So theory is a shorthand knowledge. Instead of studying all the women, I take 4 women and study them and come out that all the women will have these characters. I don't have to study other women. When I come to know that she is a woman, then I apply this theory and understand it. But our research should not be limited to understanding it. You need to add to the theory. These are the things that have been identified so far about women. This is a new dimension. There is nothing like single woman. Dalit women are different from others. Black women are different from others. Colored women are different from others. White women. So you need to add a new dimension to it. That then you are problematizing the existing knowledge in that field. So you should not be happy with application, though that can also be a research. I'm trying to force you to be more ambitious and add something else to it, modify the existing theory or question the existing theory or push the theory little forward. Then it will be a theoretical contribution.
Yes. Anybody else?
So one thing I can only just add to it, only one, that you said about the doctor, right? So that I was also thinking on that, and now I realize that doctor is not only who does the operation only. We also try to come the person to give pleasure or to come out of the depression. So there are many doctors, dentists and homeopathy and Unani and Ayurvedic and all. So we are also doctors in that.
The
We are trying to
etymology of the word doctor is actually doctrine. Those who give doctrine are doctors. So that is, you come out with a theory. So in that sense, we come out with a theory, then it's a doctrine. And doctoring is also a word in English. I was suspended from my university for submitting doctored bills
Yes.
as a TA client. When I make this statement, now I am giving my own example. I laugh at myself too. And not only laugh at others. This is again a lighter way. I was not suspended. So when I say doctored bills, you are creating a new bill. So doctoring is creating new in that sense. But it is an offence under our earlier IPC, now BNS, Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita. So doctoring in that sense creating new.
Thank you. Anyone from students? Not PhD scholars. The future PhD scholars. Last question. Yeah. Be louder.
How do we produce new knowledge? Like, what is the basis for it if we want to produce as a research?
Now to produce a new knowledge, you need to have a question. The problem with us is in literary studies, we have sources. Okay, I will work on women writers. I will work on Mashweta Devi. I will work on Salman Rushdie. We finalize the writer and their novels. Ideally, the research should begin with a research question. I want to produce knowledge about this. To answer this research, what data I need to collect? And what methods I need to employ to collect the data? And what methods I need to employ to analyze the data? So the methods are related both to collection of data and analysis of the data. And then coming to the conclusion. Logically, through rationalism or through empiricism by observation, if it is not data collected through uh, other means, you go there and then collect the data. So in that sense, you can call it as data, source material, or your participant observation, whatever it is. So how do you collect it? How do you analyze it? This entire thing is called methodology. But the basic thing, what methodology you need to apply depends on what is your research question. So if your research question is, in government schools in Gujarat, many of the students are not performing well in the subject called English. Why? Then how do you answer this question? So how do you collect the data related to pass percentage in this subject? Or are you going to attend the how English is taught in the schools, sit there, observe what is happening in the school for 1 year? That is one method of collecting data. Or record it, or simply observe. If you are recording, teacher will be conscious, student will be conscious, they all behave like good teacher, good students because there is a camera. Or you simply go and observe as as a researcher you are going observing, or unnoticed by others you go and sit in a corner and observe it without revealing that you are a researcher. Because in sociology, people have done this kind of work. People have gone to the extent of joining mafia groups to understand how mafia groups function and produce knowledge about it. That is risking their lives. And one of the celebrated Indian sociologists, M.N. Srinivas, he lived in a village in Coorg, like ordinary man, and collected a lot of. He used to come back to his hut and make notes about what is happening in that fictitious village called Rampur in Coorg. And he went back to US with that data, and all the notes he had made for 2 years was burned down. Then, luckily, then his professors allowed him to write based on his memory. Then he wrote his PhD. It is published as A Remembered Village, M.N. Srinivas. Now it is a standard textbook in sociology. So it was completely constructed on memory. So some of the words that we use like dominant caste, not simply upper caste and lower caste, dominant caste. The land owning caste in various regions uses the word dominant caste. It comes from M.S. Srinivas. And Indian society is changing because of modernization and Sanskritization. These are the two terms given by him. We use it today. So he went and stayed there and observed it as an ordinary man. So what method you are employing? That is called ethnographic method. You go live with them, Be one of them and collect data. You go there, participant observer, you participate, observe, and then collect data. That's why I say in EIT or language teaching, it should be more ethnographic based rather than questionnaire based. But unfortunately, many of the theses in EIT is happening on questionnaire. Now, so much so that in some universities, even in translation studies, they are using questionnaire method. How to teach translation? To give one passage to all the students in a class, ask them to translate, then give some questions to them to answer, and then analyze it and submit. This is how you need to teach translation to undergraduate students. I am very unhappy with it because in teaching it should be more ethnographic, participant observation.
Mixture of quantitative and
Could
qualitative.
be. And where you need to employ quantitative, you need to think about it.
Yeah.
Where you can't be participant, there is no other method available. You need to employ maybe quantitative method. And again, how far you can trust it, because you are sending a questionnaire through Google form,
Yeah.
and are they answering it, or am I asking my research scholar to, hey, answer that question? This guy is troubling me.
Validity, reliability.
We don't know. So we have to keep all these things in mind. So there are various factors that you need to keep in mind depending on what is your research question. But many times we don't have a research question. That is the problem. We have this source material. I am going to look at this writer. I am going to look at these novels. Through that, what question I am answering, I am not sure. By the time I find my research question, it will be end of 5 years. And somehow I submit. Actually, the research begins after your submission. Till now, you are getting trained under somebody else to become a researcher. Now you have got a certificate that you can do research independently. It's a driving license to do research. Don't think that just because you have completed PhD, you have done research. No, you have got the license to do research. After that, actually your research will begin. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Last 2 lines. You asked a question how to create a. So there is no magic or medicine available in the market, right? The answer, according to me, and I'm sure sir would agree to that, is read more. The more you read, you will understand what is research, what is the research work already being done, and then you identify a genuine research gap and work